Life Audio.
So I want you to ask yourself, am I naturally an initiator or an executor? And then ask yourself, what's one small step I can take today to develop the other skill? Hello and welcome to the Encourager podcast, where we have encouraging conversations to help you joyfully harmonize your home and work life. I'm your host, Rebecca Scott. I'm a wife, mother, designer, coach, and author. I'm here to help encourage and empower you to confidently make decisions that work for you and your stage of life, whatever that might be. Hello, encouragers. Are you ready to stop managing all the overwhelm and finally create some systems that bring more joy to both home and work life? Join my 10-week encouraging cohort kicking off April 2nd. Together, we're going to tackle the 5 systems: me, food, family, work, and home, so you can ditch the chaos, gain some clarity, and move forward with confidence and joy. Spots are limited, so don't wait. Enroll now at theencouragerpodcast.com, and let's build some systems that serve you and not exhaust you. On today's episode, we're going to talk about whether or not you are an initiator or an executor, and how you can become both. I think both are important to keep moving the ball forward, and this will help you recognize in some areas where you tend to be the executor and some areas where you tend to be the initiator, and some practical tips on how you can become both so that the project, the goal, the habit, the system can in fact be complete. And so listen in as I give some examples and kind of see where you fit, and then take away the action plan at the end to challenge yourself to be able to become both. So I really do fall right between the line of being both of these. And every time I ask myself reflective questions, I'm like, okay, I can definitely see how I am an initiator. I mean, I design for a living, so of course I have big ideas, and then I can put forward the steps to implement them and to more or less execute them. But it's actually like the finishing touches that I tend to lack the follow through on for me personally. And sometimes that's in my home life and sometimes that's in my work life. So I try to attract people or hire people that will help me be better at the execution process. Because I think when I've been reflecting on this myself is that I tend to be more of an initiator. But then again, it depends on what it is, whether that's home or work life. Sometimes I'm more of an executor and I don't think outside of the box like an initiator would do. Okay, so for example, for me, what made me start thinking of this podcast episode is that when I found out that I was hacked on Facebook for the 15 months, I talked about it a couple episodes back and I do highly encourage listening to it. But I was hacked on Facebook for 15 months and it took that long to regain my access back, and it turned out they actually hacked our ad account and then they hacked me personally. But what it required was an enormous amount of follow-up and management by myself personally, because I couldn't let my team do it because it required so much of my own ID and blah, blah, blah. So it meant seriously daily reaching out to Meta and asking where my case was in the queue, if you will. And so I did not like executing this project because it felt so weighty. I can't express to you the amount of stress that it caused. Seriously, daily having to contact a 1-800 number or a chatbot, yet again, to put me through a funnel that didn't actually solve my problem. And so it was very, very weighty. And I was practicing my execution bone, if you will, to make sure that I could actually finish the project. I am glad to announce now that we do have a nice, pretty little bow. Actually, I don't think it's a nice, pretty little bow. I think it's like a very haggard looking last Christmas bow, like 2 years ago bow. It was terrible, but that process is over. And that just made me think like it really helped me exercise, making sure I execute, making sure I finish it, because I can initiate the conversation with Meta, asking them for the help that I needed to make sure that my account was cleared, that we could still run ads and all of that. But the executing part is where I really fell short. So I had to create systems around that within my weekly agenda, which is a free resource on theencouragerpodcast.com. Like I just had to write on their daily Meta. I'm so glad not to have to write Meta on my daily task list for 5 days a week. I'm not going to write it anymore because it is clean. But that helped me with exercising that execution strategy so that I would finish it and keep at it and finish strong. So we're going to lean into asking yourself, are you an initiator or an executor? And then we're going to learn how to develop the other skill if we're not there yet. So by the end of this episode, you'll have actionable tips to do both initiating and executing. Okay, so what does it mean to be an initiator? This is someone who starts things, ideas, projects, plans, habits. They're the visionaries. They're the big picture thinkers. They're the ones in the boardroom with their hands in the air and they've already got the vision board created and they're already Pinteresting all the cool ideas. Those are your initiators. That is also me. I love to think out of the box. I love to think of all the ideas, but I also love to immediately start thinking about the steps to execute on it because I have a very strong implementation skill and my speed of implementation is pretty strong. Doesn't always make it great. We've talked about that too, but I can initiate things very quickly and figure out how to start them. And I do love new ideas. And so the initiator in me can be very strong. It's also because I'm charismatic, I'm enthusiastic, I can be very energizing for people. So it could be an awesome skill. But again, we're here to learn about how to do both. So here's signs that you might be an initiator. You love brainstorming and dreaming up possibilities. You get excited by a blank slate and new challenges. You often leave projects unfinished because the next exciting idea pops up. Okay, that one stung a little bit because that one is definitely me. I'm like, can we just finish? Let's just wrap it up. I will say those like, let's wrap it up. We got to get to the next thing. So I'm learning, guys. I'm leaning into both of them. Okay. The power of initiators is that they see potential and they bring creativity to the table. And then they inspire the others to take actions. There's the one who's like, guys, we could totally do this. It'll be so fun. And they're painting the picture, the visionary, and they're painting the picture of what it will look like finished. And some of you might be picturing your spouse right now or one of your kiddos. That's totally normal as well. The challenge of the initiator is that they struggle with follow through or managing the details. And that is also where I'm like, yes, the follow through with Meta was exhausting and managing all the details of the case numbers got to be so much. What does it mean to be an executor? An executor is someone who thrives in taking an idea and seeing it through to completion. So they didn't necessarily come up with the idea, but they see it through. They excel at following through and detail planning. You guys just recalled people in your life who are good at this. You have the idea and they're like, okay, let's break it down and let's get started. My assistant Angie is very good at this. I think of the idea and she's like, okay, when can we plan how to break it down? Because she does want to execute the project because I'm the visionary and obviously her boss, but also she's like, okay, I can see that this is something you're passionate about. I can see that this is something that will benefit the businesses. Let's figure out how we are going to start this. It's a pretty good matchup there. Here are signs you're an executor. You love lists and checking things off. I actually do like that part too. You prefer working with established frameworks rather than creating new ones. Or you often feel stuck without a clear plan or direction. Now, the power of an executor is that they are the finishers, the problem solvers, and the ones who turn ideas into reality. Those also, like, I could feel my heart rate go up a little bit because I'm like, yes, completion. I want a power of an executor. Sometimes I can channel that, especially the checklist. I love to do that part. Now, the challenge of the executor is that they struggle to take initiative or to think outside the box because they get paused quickly when there's not direction or the next step is not very clear. Then it's harder for them to zoom out, think outside the box, and take initiative on a new idea or have to switch directions. Here's why you need both skills. Initiating brings creativity and movement, gets the project going. Executing ensures the results. You've got to have both. And when I started writing this, I thought, well, okay, we're just going to figure out what we are so we become self-aware if we're initiator and executor. Yes, I do want you to know which one is your bigger strength, but the truth is you got to have both. You got to have both if you're going to complete it, right? So whether you're running a business, you're leading a family, or you're managing a project, success requires a balance of dreaming and doing. Okay, so here's an example. In your home life, Let's say you want to initiate something new for your family system. Let's say it's a family tradition of eating at the tables on Sunday evenings, okay? So you've had the vision, you can picture your family, you're like, okay, yep, we got to do this because this is part of the legacy that I want to leave behind, that they'll remember it. So part of that is living the legacy right now. How can I do that? You've had this vision, but you're struggling with how to execute it consistently. So it becomes a cherished routine. Like, okay, well, how do I break this down? Like, okay, it would actually take getting my calendar out and writing down how often we're going to do it. Maybe it's the next step and you're also planning the meal. Maybe it's talking with your spouse in the honey huddle, which is also another one of our free resources. Like, what would it mean? You can initiate the idea, but how are you going to execute this idea? And then an example for work would be you're dreaming up a product idea. Maybe it's a new purse. Go to designyourownpurse.com. Okay. Maybe it's a new product idea, or maybe it's a new service idea for your jobs, but following through with the marketing and the logistics to launch it, that's the executor part of it. So in that work scenario, where do you see yourself? Are you the one dreaming up the product idea or the new service or the new idea for the business? Or are you the one taking the idea from someone else, not taking it in a bad way, but like observing, soaking it in? That's what I mean. Okay. And going, okay, I know how to get this started. I know what the marketing would be behind this, and I know what the logistics would be behind this. This is like me to my team. I can think up the idea, I can think up the new purse, and I'm like, okay, guys, launch it. And then we all go, okay, well, let's reverse engineer when we want this to debut. Let's work out the details. Then I start to glaze over a little bit because I'm like, ugh, I just thought it would be fun to have a new purse, but I have to stay in there. So I'm super grateful I have people on my team who are like, okay, Becca, here is how we are going to execute this, and here's how we're going to execute it well. Then I can come back in when I can kind of clearly see, like, okay, there is an end in the process, but it's the middle one that I really struggle with. So you can see why it is important that you actually develop both skills. Now, I'm talking about a team. Even if you don't have a team, what would it look like for you personally to think of the idea and also execute the idea? What does that look like? Do you like paper and pencil? Do you like digital? Do you like the habit tracker? I love the habit tracker for completing things. Is it an accountability person where you're like, okay, I have this idea. I'm going to start this in my family, and I need you to hold my hand and follow up with me every week and ask if I did it. Like, what would it look like to come up with the idea, but then also execute the idea? And if you lean stronger in being the executor, what would it look like to have somebody help you brainstorm? Who would that be? You got to develop both. Okay, so let's also now lean into our strengths. If you're an initiator, start small, okay? Focus on completing one idea before moving to the next. This is me. This is like, okay, we're going to work on this, even in the weeds, even in the middle, and we're going to finish this before I move to my next idea. Doesn't mean I can't record my next idea, meaning write it down on a piece of paper, get excited about it, but it means I have to finish this other one before I start the next one. And you need to collaborate with an executor who can handle the follow-through. You've got to meet with someone or some piece of paper that will hold you accountable, because that counts as well, that will help you with the follow-through. Like, oh, wait, did I follow through on finishing that project? Or maybe it's just the next step. So it might be a who is going to help you finish that next step, or it might be a what. What's the best method for you? Would it be on your computer? Would it be on a piece of paper? What would be the best way for you to practice executing your idea? Also, if you are an initiator, make sure to create deadlines and accountability to move past the starting phase. We love that phase, but we naturally need to create deadlines. Remember my podcast about why you need a deadline? You need a deadline because then you will reverse engineer. Also because the initiator can see the ending point and like, okay, when we get to the end, I get to come up with my next idea. Okay, so it's kind of a little dangling carrot for you also. So create deadlines and accountability. And that might be a spouse. That might even be a kiddo. That might be a friend at church. It might be somebody on your team. But pair yourself with somebody who'll keep you accountable to finishing strong. Now, if you are an executor, challenge yourself to brainstorm and dream without constraints. And if this feels uncomfortable for you, you're like, I don't even know how I would do that. Look for some examples. Pinterest is a beautiful place. Like, you know the idea, but you're like, I don't even know how I could build it bigger. It's just like a real struggle for you. Look for examples of people who are already doing that and just get in that zone. Just be a free thought of how you would dream up something that you would like to execute. And also, I would say, Concentrate on the results and how good that will feel, and that will help give you the momentum to think of the ideas. So if the result is that you do want to have the meals at your table, remember how you'll feel, remember the memories that you'll have with your children, how good that will feel, and then go, okay, there's got to be some ideas of how I can get this done because I want the execution of it so bad. Ask yourself, if you are the executor, ask yourself, what's possible instead of what's realistic? What's possible? Expand your thinking a little bit and partner with an initiator to get inspired and push your boundaries. So if this is super uncomfortable, like I still can't do it, partner with somebody who's your brainstorming friend. Yep. You know her. You already know her. You already called her. You're like, oh yes, she does love brainstorming things because she will help push your boundaries of what is possible. Or it might be your spouse. They're the ones with the big dreams. You got to lean on the one that is not your strength and get them to develop that skill within you. Okay, so speaking of developing, let's develop the opposite skill. Okay, here's some practical tips for initiators to develop execution skills. Use tools like habit trackers, which we do have one, project management apps, there's a ton of them out there, or checklists. So if you are an initiator, start a checklist. And even initiators, which I think is so true of myself, if I create a checklist, you better believe I want to check the last thing, which is actually the execution part. So I do highly recommend checklists. Maybe it's project management tools or apps. There's a ton of them. We're talking Trello, Asana, Dubsado, tons of them. Those are like more work related, but what maybe might be for you some of your home life project management tools like our Honey Huddle. That's a good one. Or the Habit Tracker. And that's a free resource on theencouragerpodcast.com. Okay, another practical tip for an initiator is practice starting small projects and seeing them to completion. If you want to work up that muscle, start with some small projects, create your checklist, and then get to the bottom, and you've completed it. You have also played the executor. And then create routines that support consistent progress. And this, again, I think most likely would be your habit tracker. Maybe it's sticky notes on your mirror. Maybe it's pairing it with something else. You know how we call it a pairing? So it's like bread and butter. It's like cheese and chili, something you do automatically together. If you know that you're the initiator, pair your new idea with something you're already doing automatically, and you'll get better at executing the idea. Here are practical tips for executors to develop initiation skills. Dedicate time each week to brainstorming or vision casting. That's right. Each week, block out 15 minutes, block out 30 minutes for just dreaming with no constraints, just doing a little vision board, whether you write it down or maybe it's in your head. And if you're like, there is no way I'm spending time doing that, guys, remember, find your accountability partner. Who is it that likes that? Who is it that will follow up and say, hey, it's Friday afternoon. Did you do any brainstorming today? Who is that? Who could you ask to help you develop that skill? And I think the more you lean into the uncomfortableness of whether it's vision casting or brainstorming, you will exercise that muscle and get better at it. You're like, well, actually, I did think of this. You'll get better at brainstorming the more you practice it. Ask yourself, what would excite me? What an easy one. Ask yourself, what would excite me? And that'll start sparking some creativity. And then a little cheat sheet. What examples already exist of this idea? And can you set a time maybe on Pinterest to kind of find those ideas? Just a little cheat. If it's hard for you to initiate, look for some examples of someone already doing it. That'll just spark some creativity for you. You could also join groups or workshops that focus on innovation and strategy. Those can kind of be fun, especially because strategy, I feel like, is both of them very strong. It's both initiation and it's an execution because you have to come up with the idea and then the strategy to execute it. There are tons of groups. Okay, now I want to tell you, here are the benefits of becoming both. You'll feel more confident in your abilities to dream big and then also to follow through. So you won't get that initial like, ugh, that is a great idea. I'm amazing. I love that idea, but there's no way I'm going to follow through on it. If you're developing both skills, you will, and you can. You can do that. It will improve relationships, especially at work and sometimes even in your family life, because you'll be able to collaborate with the members in your family or the members in your team and adapt better because you'll start spotting like, oh, I think she is an executor. Oh, I think he is an initiator. What if he came up with the idea and she came up with the execution and I just made sure we follow through on everything? Okay? Like you'll start spotting in yourself when you tend to be more of an executor and when you tend to be more of an initiator, and then you'll immediately start asking for the help on the one you're stronger with for that particular project. And so it is important to become both, but you'll find yourself waving between the two of them depending on what the project might be. So I want you to ask yourself, am I naturally an initiator or an executor? And then ask yourself, what's one small step I can take today to develop the other skill? So we talk about the 1%. If you want to take one small step today to become a better executor, it would be creating the checklist of your big idea. That's just 1%. You're not going to take any steps at it. You're just going to write down these might be the steps. Okay? And if you want to do a 1% towards becoming a better initiator, you're going to set a timer for 10 to 15 minutes and dream. Okay? Those are just 1% steps towards developing whichever skill you feel like you're weaker at. Knowing whether you're an initiator or an executor is the first step. Which one do you lean more strongly towards? Lean into your natural strengths, but don't neglect the other side. You got to have the other side, you guys. It may not be your strength, but you can still lean into it and develop it within yourself, or collect the people that are really good at the other one around you as well. Both are learnable skills that will help you thrive at both home and work life when you have both in your arsenal of tools, and both are necessary for you to reach those amazing goals and dreams for both your home and your work life. Okay, I want you to think about a current project or goal and how can you lean into your strengths and stretch yourself to build the opposite skill. What is the project that you're currently thinking on? Maybe it's a habit, maybe it's a work, maybe it's a family system, maybe it's a food system, okay? What is that current thing that you're trying to work on and you're stuck? So how can you develop the opposite skill, whether it's initiation or execution, to get past that stuck point and get to the execution part, the finishing part, so that you can start the next one? Okay, guys, I am confident that you can develop both of the skills. I'm confident that you can become an executor, and I'm confident that you can become an initiator. Lean into the one that you're the weakest at so that you can keep developing it, so that everything that comes into your house or your work life, you're like, wait, I know how to get started and I know how to finish. Both are necessary for us to become the best humans that we want to be for both our families and our work environments. Until next time, encouragers, we got this because he's got us. Thanks so much for tuning in. If the Encourager podcast has helped or encouraged you in any way, please subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review. And then help us spread the message of encouragement and hope by sharing the podcast with others. Ready to bring more organization and joy into your life? The Encourager Academy helps you harmonize your home and work life through our online course and coaching programs. Our 5-system approach, me, food, family, work, and home, tackles your biggest obstacles, offering lifetime access to video lessons and guided worksheets. Learn at your own pace with practical tools and strategies. Enroll now at encourageracademy.com and use code WeGotThis for $50 off. Are you ready to finally create systems that help you thrive in both home and work life? Join my 10-week coaching cohort designed for busy women like you. Together, we'll create customized, foolproof systems for managing your home, business, and personal life with joy and purpose. With live coaching, practical tools, and a supportive community, you'll leave feeling organized, confident, and in control. Don't wait. Spots are limited to 10 women. Visit encouragerpodcast.com to apply.
Looking for inspiration and uplifting stories of faith? Welcome to the Jesus Calling Stories of Faith podcast, now available on Life Audio. Join us each week for heartfelt conversations and personal stories from people from all walks of life that will inspire you and lift your spirit. Whether you're seeking comfort, motivation, or just a moment of peace, the Jesus Calling Stories of Faith podcast offers a beautiful reminder of faith and hope. Listen to the Jesus Calling Stories of Faith podcast on lifeaudio.com or wherever you find your podcasts.